Hi there, this is Sally Morgan, physical therapist, craniosacral therapist, and Tellington T-Touch practitioner for animals and people. This is Tristan, he's a Corgi, and we're here for an episode of Conversations with a Corgi. And today we're going to continue our discussion about some things that you should keep in your pet first aid kit. Hi, Danny. So, and boy is my Corgi stinky. He is definitely getting a bath today. We were going to try to squeak it out for one more beach trip Labor Day, but I can't live with him smelling so bad. So let's look at a few more things you want to have in your first aid kit. One of them is a box of sterile cotton. This one's really old, as you can see. I haven't used it much. Of course, I used it a lot when I had a horse and I had a huge box. And this might even be some leftovers from that. But a sterile cotton is really useful when you have any kind of an injury that you need to keep covered. Any kind of a burn sometimes even, and you may need sterile cotton, again, for that typical running somewhere and cuts the pad. So sterile cotton's handy to have, and even if you were assembling like a tiny plastic bag of things to take with you when you go for a long hike with your dog, sterile cotton would be one of the things you want to put in that bag. Also useful for you if your cat scratches you or your dog bites you. So it's a really important part of having a first aid kit for pets, to have a box of sterile cotton and to try to keep it sterile. You know, it's in one of those plastic things rolled up so that you're only pulling off a little bit at a time. So after you get what you need, roll it back up, because I've certainly seen with horse people with so much blood and stuff going on because they're such big animals that they unroll the sterile wrap cotton and then leave it on the ground in the aisle for like 25 minutes while they're dealing with the horse, and it ends up not being sterile anymore. So that's another important thing to have. In terms of cotton, I also like to keep some plain old cotton balls around that are not necessarily sterile. You can keep these in a plastic bag. I also accumulate them out of my supplement bottles and use them for things. For instance, you can use them as earplugs for your dog or your cat if you are in a noisy situation, like maybe in traffic, and you need to help calm the animal. These are useful for that. They're also good for wiping out like the first layers of mud and gunk if there's a wound when you've been hiking. So cotton balls can't be underestimated. You can use them for a lot of other things too, especially when you have some of the wraps I'm going to show you that I like to have with the cotton balls. So this is something that I think everyone should have in their pet and human first aid kit. It's not always easy to find, although on a lot of those horse websites you can find vet wrap pretty cheap. This is a roll of vet wrap. It's also called Coband in the human world. You can get it at regular pharmacies, but it doesn't come in pretty colors generally for people. And what vet wrap is it's like an ace wrap, sort of. It peels off, to a thin little thing, and then it sticks back to itself, but it loses its stick over time, so you can't reuse it. What I've used this for with my dogs with DM, when their feet first start dragging behind on the ground but not continuously, you can put a little of this on their paws and leave it on for a couple of days and then change it out. You can use it if you have a wound up on the leg of your dog to stop the bleeding, because you can put it pretty tight. I went through 3 rolls of this when my horse cut one of the major arteries in his pastern when I was out on a trail ride, so it was a massive bloody mess, and 3 rolls of this with an entire pack of cotton was able to stabilize that wound before the vet came to sew it up. So vet wrap is great because you can take it off really easily. It's got a little heft to it, so it can also help keep a joint from bending too much. It's a perfect thing to use on any area where you're applying gauze or cotton. Gauze is also another thing you should have, and I don't know. Oh, I do have a pack of gauze here. So vet wrap is really useful. If you don't have any of the other things you need with you, except for some wound cream and this, you can put some ointment that's antibacterial, either the T-Pro or the bacitracin that I showed you yesterday, and use just this to cover the wound until you get home and can get it cleaned and do some more better care with it. So vet wrap I consider absolutely essential. You can use it for a lot of other things too. because you can wrap it over your dog. It does not stick to the hair too much. Like, let's see, can I use it? See, it's not sticking to his hair, nor is it picking up his hair either. So it really only sticks to itself. This is very useful if you have a bigger dog. I've seen quite a few larger houndy type dogs get pierced by a stick when they're running in the woods up in the top of their leg. This can be really useful to stop the bleeding there and keep it clean, because you're going to want to keep taking him for walks as he gets better. And vet wrap is great, and it's pretty cheap, and you can even get like 12-pack rolls of this, which are useful. So I would not even consider having a first aid kit without some vet wrap in it. Some other kinds of wraps that you might want to have on hand. This is, see, it's thin. It's not really like an ace wrap. It's sort of like gauze wrap, but it's not gauze because it's not sterile and it's not clean. This can be useful in a place where you want the wound to get air, like with a burn or something like that, or, you know, on a horse that slid down in the pasture and scraped his leg. This is very useful for something like that. It doesn't stick to itself. You can tear it down the middle or down the side if you only need a little piece. It's, you know, vet wrap can do pretty much everything this can do, but this is useful to have on hand just so that if you have a wound that needs air, you can put the gauze on it with this to hold it down, and there's air circulation. It's not like the thing is open to the air. So I've used this a fair amount on things like, what do you call it, pressure sores. When my dogs had DM occasionally over a bony area, I'd have to protect it with this. But I got another cream from my homeopathic vet that really took care of those so fast I didn't need to use this anymore. There's another kind of wrap that you can get. This is similar and looks like vet wrap, but for humans, but it's not. This is tape. This is a big roll of tape. You can cut it down the middle. This is a little more permanent than the vet wrap. I don't use it as much for first aid because often when you're doing first aid, you're taking your dog to a vet and you want to be able to get access to the wound without too much ripping and tearing. And so this will pull the hair out and it will stick to the actual dog. Yeah, I just pulled out a whole lot of Corgi hair there. So vet wrap is actually better because it doesn't stick to fur. If you've got like a German Shepherd or an Aussie or a Collie, you know, this could be really a big problem and it would be hard to put it on your dog. So that's why I really recommend that vet wrap. This is essential. You can use it to hold anything, anywhere on your dog. You can do things like run it over the top of your dog and wrap it around the top of his leg. It's super, super useful. And I think this is, yeah, this is a non-adherent sterile gauze pad. These are also really useful. So they're super portable, more than the cotton. So if I were going on a hike with my dog, I would want to have this, that bacitracin ointment, or the T-Pro, and some vet wrap. These are 3 essential things that you should have with you at all time because you can really care for any kind of a wound on your dog with just these 3 things. And do I keep these in a fanny pack when I'm walking my dog on the beach? No, because my dog doesn't run crazily on the beach. But if I had a 2-year-old lab, I certainly might think about keeping this on me when I'm on the beach. Because when a dog is running with that much kind of playful abandon and really just wild, not really paying attention to where his feet are, he could get caught on a shell or a piece of glass or a piece of wood. Same thing running in the woods. So just some sterile gauze and a little thing like this, and maybe the last of one of your rolls of vet wrap, and some bacitracin or some other kind of wound cream. That's all you really need to do emergency care for any kind of a cut on your dog. Sometimes I keep these 3 items in my car just in case something happens and I'm on a trail and I know I have access to it if I'm not carrying it with me. So those are some of the things that you would need to treat a wound practically instantly. Another handy thing to keep in your first aid kit for your dog, plain old Band-Aids. Now, these may be more useful for you if your dog or your cat bites you or scratches you, but for a little wound, like maybe on your dog's face, you could get away with using one of these if you didn't have any of this other stuff with you. So, and certainly you can't really vet wrap your dog's nose, but a wound near his eye, you could use this just to cover it, to keep it clean till you get home. And to that end, one of the things that people often forget for their first aid kits is eye care. And eye injuries happen a lot more in animals than we remember or think about. So I like to get these little packs of liquid tears. These are TheraTears liquid gel. It's eye lubricant. You can use it, they're like one-time only uses. And you can use it, especially with horses, you need these. But for, you know, some of our dogs like pugs and Shih Tzus and some of like boxers with the bulgier kind of eyes, this stuff is really important to have around. Dogs get things in their eyes all the time when they're rolling on the grass. You need to be able to clean that eye out with something sterile. And this and maybe some eye drops that are just for the dog that are saline can be really handy to have in your first aid kit. And a lot of people forget about this. They think about wounds, they think about you know, some kind of creams and covering for the wounds, maybe aches and pains in your dog, but people forget about eye care. Eye care is really important, and prompt treatment for an eye injury can really make a big difference. So I use these TheraTears and also some kind of just regular old saline solution for humans to clean out the eye. I don't carry that with me typically, but I definitely have it at home. And certainly if I had my horse boarded somewhere, I would have absolutely some things like that in my tack box to use for my horse, because horses have very big eyes and they play rough and they're rolling, and like that young Labrador running on the beach, sometimes horses roll with a lot of abandon and they flop over side to side and they scratch their head on the ground, and just a tiny rock or a little piece of a burr, anything like that can really irritate the eye, and that can happen to your dog rolling as well. So don't forget about eye care when you're thinking about some things to keep in your pet first aid kit. So we're going to continue to talk about some of these things tomorrow as well, but I want to remind everybody today is National Spoil Your Pet Day. Spoil your pet. I hate that word choice, because you know what? We just want to love our pets, and you know, the idea that we're spoiling them comes from like thinking of feeding your children candy so that they won't eat dinner. And that's not what spoiling for dogs is really about. It should be National Love Your Dog Day instead of Spoil Your Dog. Every day should be a special day for your dog. So give him some extra treats, take him for a special walk, give him a bath, and spoil your dog today. I think we're going to buy a Dremel so that I can manage his toenails a little better. He really seems to not mind it, and it's easier to use than the clipper. So that might be what he gets for Spoil Your Dog Day, a Dremel nail tool. So thanks for joining us today for this episode of Conversations with a Corgi. Brian has moved and his computer is being set up, so he's going to be uploading the many past episodes, maybe 15 now, to YouTube pretty soon. Of course, if you're listening to this, you don't care if they're on YouTube yet, but they will be, so don't worry. And we will see you tomorrow. Everybody have a great day. We're supposed to have a day with no thunderstorms, which is a big deal here. I have so much work to do today. After so many clients this week, I finally have to catch up on the paperwork. And the dog washing. Dog washing. He doesn't mind a bath. He's actually very good. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day, everybody.